Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you may be. My name is Randy Kobach, and I am in marketing here at DAT. And we are so excited to welcome you all to our webinar today, which is healthy tips. And to give you an idea of what the agenda is going to look like, first we're going to do introductions, and I'm going to introduce you to our speakers today. And then we chunked up the content. First, we're going to talk about sleep and how can you get higher quality sleep in fewer hours. And then diet, helping to give advice on how to make good choices. And then lastly, we're going to talk about exercise and be really realistic, because we know that when you're on the road, all of these things can be a challenge. And then lastly, we're going to go into question and answers. So to start out, I'd like to introduce our speakers today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and why don't we start out with Dean?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning if you're on the West Coast. Thanks for joining us. My name is Dean Croak, Market Analyst here at DAT. This is a subject that's dear to my heart. I've done a couple of million miles as an over-the-road driver in Australia. I still have a CDL and still drive, still own a Class 8 truck. And so I still have to pass the DAT physical every year. In fact, I just passed my DAT physical this morning. And I've got to say it's an ordeal. And I don't drive professionally, but it's just the pride of having a CDL and being healthy enough to pass one, because the CDL test or the DAT physical is very different these days. So I'll just sort of get back to the introduction, then we'll dive into the content. Spent a lot of years as an over-the-road driver, owning trucks, running trucks, trying to manage drivers, trying to keep them healthy, trying to keep them safe. I lost a couple of drivers on my watch as an operations manager and had to tell their families that their driver had passed away, or that their spouse had passed away. It's one of those life-changing experiences, and that's what sent me down the path of trying to figure out, why do we fall asleep at the wheel, and why do we eat the way we eat? Why do we crave certain foods? How do you deal with sleep deprivation, sleep disorders? I learned a bit about sleep disorders after my father, who was a trucker, died of his second heart attack. He had undiagnosed sleep apnea his entire life. And even on the ER table, they still didn't recognize that he was gasping for air and couldn't breathe. And of course, today, when you do your DAT physical, neck size is very important, because it's a predetermining factor for obstructive sleep apnea. So the whole idea of sleep and sleep disorders and diet and nutrition is tightly interwoven. I'm looking forward to hearing what the guys have got to say today, because it's one of those areas that drivers struggle with. They, as a driver, I always used to go for comfort food because of the boredom and the stress and the sleep deprivation. And you go into a truck stop and you make bad choices, and you get out on the road and you feel tired again. And it's like a roller coaster that you can't get off. And one of the things that I did figure out was the sleep part. And I'll talk a bit about that in a minute once Bob and Mark do their intros. It's going to be a really interesting discussion today. Hope you all get a lot out of it.
Thank you, Dean. My name is Bob Perry with Health and Transportation. I'm also currently a consultant with an organization called Aspire, and we have a product called Fit to Pass, which we focus on helping professional drivers, bus and truck alike, to prepare for their upcoming DOTs and pass. I come from a family of professional drivers. I have two brothers still drive today. I drove years ago. Our father drove for 45 years, retired, and as I say, he retired with the professional truck driver healthcare package. He had high blood pressure, had sugar, he had sleep deprivation. So he had it all. And cut his life retirement a year short. So my goal and mission has been I want to help my brothers retire healthy, and the other drivers that I can help in some form or fashion, and just give them simple tips that they can do out there on the road to be safe and to protect their livelihood and get home safe to see their family at the end of the day. So appreciate good the DAT doing this.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to be here too. Thank you for everyone coming and listening to this. So my name is Mark. I am the founder and CEO of the Trucking Fitness Company. And I'm also a doctor of physical therapy. And Unlike Bob and Dean, who have kind of been in the truck and behind the wheel themselves, I didn't have that experience. And my first time working with drivers was actually rehabbing them in a physical therapy clinic. And I saw firsthand the struggles that drivers have with their health and how it can really affect them in and out of the truck. And that's what inspired me to start the Trucking Fitness Company. And we're on a mission to give drivers the easiest entry point into exercising and eating healthy on the road. And I find with drivers, one of the hardest part is just finding step one. Everyone's thinking step 9, 10, 11, and they forget about, hey, how do I just actually get the ball rolling or the tires turning, right? And so, that's really where we're focused on, is getting them the easiest entry point and then growing with them, as they, start making progress.
Great. All right, well, thank you. Bob and Mark, we'll get started with the presentation. Remember, if you've got questions, drop them in the question section as we go through it. We'll do our best to get to them as we go. If not, we'll allow sufficient time at the end. We've already had some questions come in advance, so we've got something to chat about at the end. So I wanted to just talk about, the topic of the session was about DOT physicals. That was kind of the attention-grabbing piece that we put out there. It can't be underestimated these days. I've only been here, I moved from Australia here in 1999, so I've only been part of the DOT physical FMCSA program for 23 years. I remember in 2004, we were helping the FMCSA redesign the hours of service regulations at the time based on some of the work we did in Australia with fatigue management. And of course, that was the first time the hours of service regulations had been changed since 1934, I think it was, Bob, if you remember. So it was a long time between hours of service changes, right? But in 2004, they also made some changes to the DOT physical. And I remember when I first got my DOT or my license, my CDL, the question was, do you snore? Yes or no? That was it. And of course, everybody knew just to say no. Like that was easy. And of course, it had nothing to do with the sort of the underlying conditions that you might have had. But over the time, it's evolved into this really, it's a big deal for drivers. So that, the CDL physical today is looking at all your blood work, blood pressure in particular. Today, I was stressed about going for my DAT physical this morning, I'll admit. And I had to wait half an hour for my blood pressure to come down under 90 and under 135. So I ended up at 135 over 85, but it took half an hour of me sitting there meditating and relaxing to get that right. And so that's and the doctor said, that's fairly normal for drivers that come in here because they're worried and they're stressed about this. They're stressed about things like having to go for a sleep apnea study. They're stressed about losing their 2-year card to a 1-year card. So it's an ordeal for drivers. And I'll share you with you one data point that when I was working at Omnitrax Analytics, we did predictive modeling. One of the things we did was predict the likelihood of drivers to have an accident. And one of the strong predictors was the number of days until their DOT physical was due. And you'd say, well, how does that play out in terms of preventable accident where the driver's at fault? And I can tell you that one of the things that weighs on a driver's mind is the physical aspect of their life, the stress, the depression, the sleep deprivation, the being away from home, trying to deal with teenagers, customers, not being friendly, not having enough amenities when you're unloading and loading. There's a whole lot of things that go on with it. But the stress of worrying about your DOT physical weighs on a driver, and it's in data. And it turns out that for about 9 months on, drivers start to really worry about the DOT physical because they may not be on their meds. They may be worried about their blood pressure. They know they've put on a few too many pounds. They've seen their friends that have had to go for sleep studies because they've got a neck size greater than 18 inches. There's all these things go on. And of course, drivers talk in truck stops. Little things become big things and kind of get out of control. So the DOT physical is not to be underestimated. It's a really big deal, and anything anyone can do to help drivers deal with this long before the DOT physical is really important. So before we dive into the main topics today, I just want to cover a little bit about sleep. As a driver, I used to joke that I used to fall asleep for a living as a driver. And when you drive out in the outback of Australia, there's nothing to hit. So I'm only here because of sheer luck, not because of anything else, because I fell asleep and ran off the road a lot. And there's a lot of miles, over the 2 million miles I did. It's probably a third of them I don't remember. because one of the signs of sleep deprivation is working memory. Short-term working memory disappears when you get tired. You forget where you are. You forget your exits. You forget which direction you're heading. I pulled up in the middle of the night and got out and had to look at stars to figure out what direction I'm going. So sleep deprivation can really play games with a driver's mind. It's one of those jobs where sleep is kind of a luxury. Some of the problems we've got in our industry are the way the hours of service are designed. If you think about why the changes happened in 2004, it was really to try and bring the hours of service cycle in line with the rising and setting of the sun. So you had 11 hours on, 3 other, 10 off, 24 hours. The sun rises and sets every 24 hours. That was the science behind it. And one of the things, if you can always have a regular work schedule, you've got a regular sleep schedule, right? So the anchor sleep comes in. The problem with the old hours of service regs was 10 on, 8 off. So a new workday started 6 hours earlier. So that was a backwards rotating 6-hour schedule. And you biologically can't fall asleep 6 hours earlier every day. It's physically impossible to do. And that's why it was so problematic for drivers. They're very productive, but sleep deprivation was enormous with the 10 on, 8 off deals. That's why it went to 11, 3, and 10. So we made some progress with the hours of service there. And what I've done over the last 20 years is spent a lot of time teaching drivers and their spouses and teenage children, because the spouses and the teenage children control the sleep schedule at home on the weekends. You can never ignore them when it comes to education. And trying to get drivers to understand how to sleep better within the confines of the hours of service regulations, even though they are highly prescriptive and sometimes they don't fit your biological pattern or your circadian rhythms. So some of the circadian rhythms I wanted to touch on briefly are things like the sleep cycle. We sleep in cycles of roughly 90 minutes. So every 90 minutes we'll go through a pattern of light sleep, deep sleep, dream, and then we go into another sleep cycle. Typically in 7.5 hours, you'll have 5 sleep cycles. So, every hour and a half you wake. A lot of drivers will tell you that they wake every hour and a half. They'll hear a reefer motor going next door, and then they'll go back to sleep and they drift off and then they wake and drift. So sleep architecture is what it's called. We sleep in cycles of about 90 minutes, 90. Mine's an hour and 24 minutes. You can actually figure this out by, there's some apps you can buy to figure out what your sleep patterns are like. The average is about an hour and a half. And why this is really important for drivers is this, and Bob has probably done this and his brothers probably still do it. They will say over the CB to their buddies, I'm going to pull up and have an hour. And it's the worst number. An hour is the worst number to pick. Of all the numbers you could pick, an hour is the worst. The physiology is that after about an hour of falling asleep, you're in deep sleep. Your brain's disconnected, right? Your body's tossing and turning because it's going through the physical repair process of repairing bones, muscles, skin, etc. But during the dream part of the sleep cycle, at the end of it, your brain wakes up, your body goes into a state of paralysis, so you don't act out your dreams. And that's when the brain gets all of its fatigue dealt with. But at the hour mark, you are in deep sleep. You are dead to the world, as the expression goes. And if you try and wake from deep sleep, you wake with this thing called sleep inertia. And sleep inertia feels like you're groggy, tired, moody, lethargic, disorientated. And it takes about a half hour to kick it out of your system. And that's why a lot of people get out of bed with sleep inertia after waking from deep sleep, have a cup of coffee. It takes half an hour to kick in, and then they're good to hit the road. But you would be surprised at how many accidents occur within the first half hour of a rest break because the drivers wake up with sleep inertia. And the problem for truckers is the more sleep deprived you are, the more severe the sleep inertia is and the longer it takes to overcome. So sleeping in cycles of an hour and a half means that you're always waking up at the end of a dream. You can wake up and get going and feel quite alert. So I always teach drivers to sleep in blocks of an hour and a half. So you sleep for an hour and a half, 3, 4.5, 6, 7.5, and so on. If you time your sleep around hour and a half blocks, you will find that you will feel much better. And that's how you get, so to take that one step further, 7.5 hours is better than 8, right? And 6 is better than 7, because you've got to time your sleep for blocks of an hour and a half, because every time you wake from deep sleep, you wake with that thing called fatigue, where you feel groggy and moody and your eyes ache, you get that dull ache behind your eyes and your head aches and you're not quite with it. So sleeping in cycles is really important. If you're setting alarm clocks, always set them for multiples of an hour and a half. The other things that are really important, getting 2 periods of night sleep every 7. So throw the 34-hour restart out the window. It's not going to help you if you're only getting 1 period of night sleep. You have to get 2 periods of night sleep back to back every 7. Otherwise, the sleep debt from this week carries over to next week. The human brain needs 2 periods of night sleep to dispense the sleep deprivation from a week on the road. That's a really important number, so drivers always need to do that. And I think the most important thing, a lot of people ask me, what's the most important thing a driver could do, or a fleet, or any sort of operation? And my advice is always start your drivers at the same time every single day. If you can lock in your start time, you lock in anchor sleep, because the human body has this craving for anchor sleep, which is sleep at the same time in the same place every single day. It's an inbuilt drive that's hard to break. And if you have the same start time, by default, you have the same sleep pattern. And if you can have the same sleep pattern, a lot of things that Bob and Mark are going to talk about become crystal clear, and you make better decisions. Because as drivers, we all make really poor decisions when we're sleep deprived. It's one of the things you've got to get right is the sleep part, getting the schedules right. There are some fleets now that are actually designing schedules around driver sleep patterns. It's called biocompatible scheduling. I did some work for truckload carriers where we designed biocompatible schedules for teams. We put a night owl with a morning lark in the team. We never put two night owls together, because one of them wants to sleep. They both want to sleep at the same time, right? So if you just get your head around the sleep aspect of this, because managers mightn't think it's important, but drivers struggle with this every minute of the day. Sleep deprivation is a real thing, and it's why we behave the way we behave. It affects our diet. It affects our decision making. There's some aspects of the sleep deprivation that's really important. I've just got some data here. I read a study the other day in preparation for this, and I'll say that 6 hours, right? So you say, what's the important number? It's 6 hours. Anything less than 6 hours, you have a whole raft of health issues that start to emerge. But 6 hours is important. They did a study that showed that drivers who slept less than 6 hours ate about 550 more calories the next day. And it's an interesting study. And I know that's the case for me. Like, I know when I'm sleep deprived and I don't sleep well, I eat. And if I don't hydrate properly, I kind of head towards high water content carbohydrates, and I make bad decisions. And I'm almost saying, well, I'll get to that tomorrow. Well, tomorrow never comes. And the next thing you know, you put on weight, your blood pressure's up, and you're failing your DAT physicals. So the sleep part of it is really important. I'd encourage anybody listening today that's in the management space is to try and work out around how you can design schedules around your driver's preferred sleep pattern. If you can do that, a lot of things that you're about to hear will start to become a little bit clearer for the drivers, because even though the education is going to be fantastic and the tips will be wonderful, when drivers get tired, they forget stuff. They forget things, and they tend to take the easy way out and make that poor choice. And that's certainly how I've lived most of my life, and how a lot of drivers certainly have. So over to you guys.
Dean, I have a question. I have a question based off of something that you said, because it was really interesting, the 1.5-hour blocks.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
if someone I know for me specifically, I sometimes don't hit the pillow and just fall asleep. Sometimes it takes me 20, 30 minutes. Is that
Great
based
question.
off of the time you fall asleep, or?
No, so the average, it's called a multiple sleep latency test, right? So when they send you for a sleep study, they test how long it takes you to fall asleep. The average is about 20 minutes, right? So sleep latency is about 20 minutes. If you fall asleep in less than 20 minutes, that's a marker of sleep deprivation. And you'll talk to a lot of truckers and they'll say, oh, I fall asleep within a minute. My head hits the pillow and I'm out. Well, dude, you're sleep deprived. And so what I say to people is, if you fall asleep in 10 minutes or 20 minutes on average, start the 1.5-hour cycle from there. So if you want to get 4 sleep cycles or 6 hours, set your alarm clock for 6 hours and 20 minutes. And then what you'll
go for it.
Yeah, what you'll find is you'll be waking up before the alarm, because right now a lot of people are automatically waking at 5 in the morning, but they set their alarm clock for 5:30 or 6, and they go back to sleep and they wake up and they feel like hell. Whereas the brain woke them at 5 o'clock at the end of that last sleep cycle. So in fact, getting out of bed when you wake up in the morning is actually much better than laying in bed, because it's not linear. More sleep isn't better, more hours. It's the timing of sleep that's absolutely critical. So if you need 6 hours, set your alarm clock for 6 hours and 20 minutes. And then over a couple of nights, you'll figure this out really quickly, because you'll be feeling much better.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I know the other thing that a lot of drivers ask me when it comes to sleep is caffeine. right? And I
Yeah.
think it's
Yeah.
something that they're drinking all day on the road. And,
Right.
you know, when I've looked at the research and looked at it, you know, I see that there are actually some benefits of, you know, one study I think found that I won't say the percentage off the top of my head, but they found that for every 8 ounces of caffeine
Right.
they drank, there was improved or decreased likelihood of a crash. And that obviously there
Right.
was a
Right.
top level there.
Yep.
And, you know, from a
Yep.
sleep perspective, I know caffeine in general has a half-life of 3 to 7 hours.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that means it takes 3 to 7 hours for
Yep.
the effects of
Yep.
caffeine to get out of your body. Is that your
Yep.
recommendation if someone's drinking
Yeah.
coffee?
My
Yeah.
recommendation is I say to drivers, don't drink caffeine past 3 p.m. or 3 a.m.
There we go.
Right. So because you've got to give the sleep gate won't open. Right. So the sleep gate's got to open when the caffeine effectiveness wears off and the tiredness kicks in. Now, if you drink caffeine too close to bedtime, the sleep gate won't open and you'll be laying there bug-eyed all night. So caffeine's one, it's got a double-edged sword, right? It helps you get through the bad hours around sunrise at 6 a.m. But if you're thinking you're going to go to sleep at 9 o'clock when you get onto that dock, it's going to be really, really hard. So caffeine management's absolutely critical. I'll stop there. We can talk about this later. I want to make sure we get to you guys, but who's up next? Are you up next, Mark or Bob?
I am. And, you know, I
Okay,
think
let's
one
throw
of
to
the
you.
things, yeah, if the going to the next, you know, I think one of the things that I get, you know, trying to eat healthy is a really a question. And, you know, a lot of drivers say, well, it's impossible to eat healthy on the road. Look at the options I have. You know, going to the truck stop, you got Cinnabon, you've got Snickers and everything possible
Hmm.
that's, you know, making me go this way versus trying to find the healthiest options. And, you know, what I try to set the mindset for drivers is that eating healthy is not this on-off switch. You know, it's not like you flip it on, I'm eating healthy, I'm flipping off, and you're not eating healthy. I look at eating
Right.
healthy as a spectrum. And on
Mm.
one end of the spectrum, you've got, let's just, if we could state something, the healthiest meal in the world, right? And then on the other end, you've got the worst diet in the world. And for a majority of people, and drivers included, you're somewhere in the middle, right? Some people might be closer to the healthier option, some people might be closer to the unhealthy option. And instead of having the mindset of, hey, I need to flip everything upside down, change my everything about my diet, because that's the normal thing a lot of people think. Oh, Monday I'm going on a diet, I'm changing
Mm.
everything, I'm
Right.
staying
Right.
6 feet away from every, you know, donut in the world, and I
Right.
can't do anything but eat, you know, lettuce and dry chicken, right? And I think the mindset that a lot of drivers need to have is, instead of making that huge flip, is look at your normal day of eating and what's the low hanging fruit, and what are, you know, one or two small changes that you could make that doesn't change your day-to-day life a crazy amount, that would make
Mm.
your average day of eating 10 to 15% healthier.
Mm.
And if that's picking a healthier option at the restaurants you're already eating at, if that's
Mm.
finding healthier options at the truck stops, or stocking your truck up with healthier snack options, I
Mm.
think those are the types of decisions and
Mm.
small changes that a lot of
Mm.
drivers would benefit from. Because,
Right.
you know, when I'm working with drivers, it is we have a program that's called the Level Up program, and it's you basically stack habits, and you start with one small habit and you build upon it. And the first habit we have drivers do is stop drinking your calories. And I can't tell you how many
Mm.
times I have drivers who, you know, for example, one driver that we worked with on the first onboarding call, they told me that their average day of drinking was 2 12 packs of Pepsi a day,
Wow. 12
24/7.
packs. Wow.
Yeah, and so, you know, obviously, a majority of people listening to this are probably not that extreme, but we
Mm.
slowly cut down on the amount of soda he was drinking. We switched from regular soda to diet soda, so he was taking in less sugar, less
Mhm.
calories. And just from that one switch, he wasn't even doing a crazy amount of exercise or doing anything else with his diet. The weight was coming off because
Mm.
there was just so many calories that he was consuming every single day from just the drinking
So
Pepsi.
it was
And so
habitual. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. And so, you know, I on the next slide I have a couple of examples, because, you know, I think a lot of people, when they are thinking about eating healthy, they're like, well, I can't eat at Burger King, I can't eat at McDonald's, you know, I have to cook in my truck, I have to do all these other things. And so what I want, you know, a lot of drivers listening to this to think about is, I'm already at these restaurants. Let's not change that up right now, but let's fix and, pick a healthier option at that restaurant. So here are a bunch of, just examples of small changes that drivers could make from what they choose meal wise that are saving them, over 1,000 calories at some points just from one meal. And so if you just focused on switching one meal a day and just nailing down breakfast or nailing down dinner from making small changes at the same restaurant, there's a lot of drivers that can make a ton of progress towards, the losing weight, towards controlling diabetes, towards, passing their next DOT physical from just one shift and starting there.
Yep. Yep. And those are pretty attractive alternatives, right? When you look at the chicken sandwich, the Arby's ham and Swiss melt, and the artisan grilled sandwich, they look pretty enticing.
Yeah, you don't have to hate your life either to live a little bit healthier.
So, Mark, just talk briefly before we jump to Bob, and then we maybe go back and forth a bit. But one of the things that I found when I was driving was it was very important for me to take snacks, right? So healthy snacks. I'd take, almonds, olives, things that were to satisfy the hand to mouth habit, right? So, the sleep cycle is what they call an ultradian cycle. So a circadian is 24 hours. Every hour and a half, we go through this ultradian cycle. Well, we also go through a period of low alertness every hour and a half. That's why a lot of people go for the cigarette or the coffee every hour and a half. But as a driver, I can recall going through, drivers call it getting their second wind. But what happens is in that low point when you get tired and you wind the window down and you kind of fidget around a bit, that's when you're more than likely to make that bad decision. So that's when I was always have the right snacks. So what do you recommend in terms of low-cal snacks for drivers to have on hand all the time?
So, I think number one, something that I tell drivers all the time is you can snack, but don't graze. And the difference there is if you're going to have a snack, plan it out in your daily between meals, plan it out in your, this is my average, every single day I'm going to eat a healthier snack. And what I suggest there is, maybe start number one, or I guess phase number one or step one is, a lot of drivers probably don't even need to change what snacks they're currently eating, but they can just start measuring out one serving of that food. Because I find a lot of drivers go bad by opening the bag of Doritos and having it next to them. So they're just eating the whole bag versus eating one serving of Doritos. Because
maybe back off the Doritos a bit.
Oh, there you go. But here's the thing. I also don't think there's nothing wrong with eating Doritos every once in a while, right? It's just having that balance and finding, the right balance point. So, I think when you're looking for snacks, nuts, almonds, some of those nuts and high fat snacks are great. They can add up calories really quick, so you want to measure those out. Fruit, no one's ever gotten fat from eating too much fruit and vegetables. And then, if you can find something that's high in protein, I don't think enough drivers are getting the amount of protein they need. And when you eat foods high in protein, they satisfy you quicker, and also you stay full and you don't get as hungry for longer. And that's my suggestion.
So small shifts and make it a habit. All right. Yep. All right, let's come back to you a little bit later, Mark. Let's throw to Bob and talk about some of Bob's experience and what he thinks about what drivers can do to get themselves into shape.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen. So, one of the things that just to kind of tag on what you were talking about earlier, Mark, is that drivers' first question they always want to come to me is, how am I going to get rid of my stomach, Bob? Is it sit-ups? Is it leg ups? What's the best thing to do?
Right.
The thing to do is you got to control what you put in your mouth, because you're never ever going to outrun your diet.
Wow.
And
awesome.
the idea that it's to your point also too, you're talking about, Dean, the rest. If you talk to any professional, athlete, trainer, whoever, they're always going to tell you number one is rest, number two is, and number three is the workout, right? Rest that's when you really recover, and to your point, sleeping in those designed box times is very, very crucial, important. And I agree 100% what you're saying, because I've done it myself. I'm better off 20 minutes or whatever before I get into that deep, if I just want to rest my eyes and think through for the drivers, I tell them, it's about movement, to help you really get your circulation going and get some, some blood flow up to your brain so you can think more. And also it's about, walking as simple as walking, but you have to walk what I call with intention. And that means you got to keep your shoulders back, keep your abs tight. If you're going to do it, and you don't have to be like, there's many studies out there. It's not like the old days that you got to do it for an hour. It can be 10-minute increments, right? And you can do that 3 times a day, and you get 30 minutes in. The idea is to get the blood flowing going, and sure you're going to burn a few calories. And you don't need really expensive equipment. A good pair of shoes is very important. I know historically they always say, you talk to drivers who do take care of themselves. Well, I park in the back of the truck stop and walk as far as I can, which is very good. Also at the same time is, like I said, and I always recommend to my drivers too, when I'm training them, put your phone away. It's a time for you to think and think good thoughts, like you were talking about. What you said about laying down for your blood pressure. I was on a training session yesterday with a group, and we were talking about blood pressure. And I tell them that, told the drivers that when you go in, you want to go in and try to put yourself in a space that makes you feel good, that you think about getting home to see the family, going to whatever it is, right? Picture that. And go in, sitting up straight. You don't cross your leg, and you just get that. Like you said, you get into that. Because I've seen clinics, and to your point, I mean, I see it all the time. They'd have to come in, and we'd have to lay them down for 30 minutes, whatever, to get that. They get amped up, right? So that's what we try to do, is help coach them to get to that space. But back to the movement part, is it really is about one of the things that also too is talk to drivers about the exercise you want to do, and it's about being injury prevention at the same time. And sit in your truck, you're sitting for 3 or 4 hours, and you jump out, and let's say you're going to put your landing gear down, you're not warmed up, and that's when you have the shoulder problem, pulling the foot up. And I'm sure Mark can attest to this, that when those rotator cuffs tear, you didn't do it every day. You could have done it the year before, right, Mark? I mean, it's over repetitious periods of time of doing that same incorrect movement, not warming up. And like simplest things like getting in and out of the cab, I tell the drivers to really think of that bar they pull up. It's really a guide bar in here. They got to learn to use their legs to push themselves up into it. And it's just, when that back or that shoulder goes, it's just, it finally rubber band reached the point of, okay, stretch me, right? I'm done, and boom, snaps, and there you go. And it's just as bad as having a medical disqualification, right? It's the same thing. So when you're doing the exercises, I always talk to them about, and it can be simple as a gallon jug, and take that gallon jug and fill up halfway with water or all the way up. And it's about just doing certain movements, do your rotator cuffs to get them warmed up. It's not about the weight, it's really about the movement and the repetitions. And so, one of the things that, when you talk about snacking that Mark got into, and you did as well, Dean, is that, when we're training to be drivers, one of the things that they just drill into our brain is the pre-trip safety, right? Every time you stop, never pull it out until you walk around. And I can't tell you, growing up, my dad was very lucky. He had 6 kids, and we were the pit crew, and he'd come in no matter what time it was, and everybody had duties, and you had to walk around that trailer not once, but twice, but 3 times to see if anything's hanging down, the lights, time, everything. And when you're doing that, I tell the safety directors, practice telling them to do a pre-trip refrigerator check, because when you're a professional driver, you're going to get stuck, whether it's weather, construction, breakdown, accident, and you're sitting there and you're not moving. And when you don't have a good choice to reach for, you make a bad choice.
That's great advice.
Pounding the drinks, I used to do it some time ago. I would do I was the on-site coach when they do the national championships and truck driving championships at ATA and work with a lot of the state patrol. And they told me that they go out and they get called out and there's an accident and the truck is flipped over. The very first thing they do, Dean, is they go and they look and they see how many empty energy drink cans there are in the cab.
Right.
Collecting them to see if that driver has been pounding those to the last minute. And so that's why
giveaway. Yeah.
when you are sitting there, and we all know when the wheels aren't turning, you're not earning, right? So when the traffic clears, now you're ready to go and you're all amped up and you're going. But the only problem is you're going to only be amped up for about 30 to 45 minutes. Right. Well, what Mark said is good advice. Have some nuts. And I recommend that they, even when they're having fruit, apples, and peanut butter with it, because the peanut butter is the protein, slow down the absorption of the sugar in the system, and you can make it. And you just gotta. It's like when I get so frustrated about it. I don't mean to get on a soapbox here, but what I always get frustrated about when they talk about drivers don't get it, don't understand. I don't agree, because I think that drivers, I've learned that they're very industrial thinking, and when you do the relationship to like their truck and maintenance, the preventive maintenance, only I tell them it's personal preventive maintenance of your body. Always do your health checks, get in front of it, take a peek under your personal hood to see what's going on, and doesn't do you good to have the nicest looking, polished, best truck out there, right? You can attest to this. You just went and got your DOT. Talking about we're going to be at Matt's and you're going to have your truck all polished up. It doesn't do any good, right, my friend, if it all looks good and runs good, but Dean can't get behind the wheel because
exactly.
Right? You do all those things. The thing you forgot to do the most was repair your own engine.
Yeah. I think it's interesting you guys are sort of talking about little steps, right? So making small steps to sort of change those habits. One of the things I've noticed drivers doing a lot more on social media is their own cooking, right? So they because costs are high, right? So costs have gone through the roof. And I see drivers, because they have the facilities in their truck, whether they have a microwave in the truck and an APU and the other appliances, but I also see more and more drivers with the portable gas bottle, the small barbecue hot plate, and they're cooking nice meals when they've got the time in a truck stop with their friends. What sort of advice would you give drivers in terms of what to take with them? Like, what's that shopping list look like? What do you take with you to stock that fridge for a week on the road? Like, what are the sort of the go-to things that you would recommend for drivers to make those baby steps?
Mark,
I think to start, it's number one. I think a lot of those drivers, and if you're going to decide to cook, I think I found that the drivers who are cooking and stick to it, it turns into a hobby for them, and it's something they enjoy, and it's part of their. It's a mental health aspect of just like, I enjoy doing this. I like this. There are so many when it comes to air fryers, when it comes to, I was at Walmart the other day and there's like a 9-in-1 industrial machine that could fit in the truck. And I've seen some drivers on TikTok having that. And, I think for me, it's finding those meals. If it's, I've had some drivers who like making eggs in their microwave, who cooking even steaks in their air fryer. Now I've heard that it takes a little bit longer to get the steak smell out of the cab if you do that. But I found that if you're not into cooking, finding recipes that you can do in 5 minutes or less that you can whip up in no time is the best way to go about it. And there's millions of them out there on the internet and or Pinterest or any of those.
What about like a roast or a pot stew or something like that? You can cook at home and then have it. I know drivers that will package up 4 or 5 days of meals at a time.
Yeah, and I think that's
meal
where
prepping's great. Go for it, Bob.
The support at home comes in, and that's what we do is help educate the spouse or the maid at home on, and that's the best thing to do is prepare, right? And it's like preparation and preventive maintenance on the truck. Once again, it's like that before you go out, that weekend that you package up certain foods that you can, if you have a microwave that you can heat. I think Mark had a very good point that there's such a small percentile, Mark, I found, of drivers who really get into that, right? It's like a gourmet kitchen back there, right? And they're really into that. And I think that's fabulous. But when you're trying to talk about the general population out there, I think that's a little overwhelming. And I think what you and I do, try to get those folks the first, like you said, step 2 doesn't happen until you do step 1. And my thing is simply, you're going to Walmart, you can buy those little, containers of, whether it be tuna, salmon, chicken, whatever, 99 cents. And you have those in there, and you can get you some salad and make you that, or you can make it into a sandwich real easy, just better. We did a survey one time and tracked drivers at this one particular fleet for 30 days and took information about what they spent out on the road. And it was amazing. It went from anywhere from $400 to $800 a month they were spending. We had to bring their tickets in. And I do it all the time when I'm out. I see the drivers, they go up to the, whether it's Arby's, McDonald's, whatever it is, right? And you don't get out of there for less than $10 anymore. And if you go to the store and just, learn to do that. And my rule that I try to go with them on is 50%. Just give me 50% of the time, make a better choice. Because, I've learned that over the years that drivers, when I calculate this, they consume about 4,000 calories a day. Like Mark talked about, the one driver drinking all those Pepsis, that's not unusual, right? So being a driver to shave off 3,000 to 4,000 calories in a week, which is very obtainable without really putting them into orbit and making changes, then they're going to see maybe 5 pounds, 6 pounds. And when they do that, you're going to see good things happen on the inside. You're going to see the blood pressure drop. You're going to see the sugar go down. And they're just going to feel better, right? About mentally. And that's what it is, mentally saying, you know what, I did it. Okay, this week I'm going to do this. Taking those steps at a time.
And that's why I've found that, of all this training programs you can implement, if you get the sleep right, you feel better the next morning, right? So it doesn't take 4 months to change a habit. If you get the sleep right, you'll feel better immediately and you'll start to make those better choices. So that's a very important piece. I'll just quickly, we've got a comment here from Andres Levins.
Just a quick really quick, just off that, Dean, I've also found that the mental health and the clearing of your mind from getting outside, going on a walk, or getting a workout done after driving all day is a pretty immediate effect too. And so I think that there's some benefits of that too.
Yeah. All right. Andres Levin says on our chat, great information, guys, very fundamental, but it does need repeating and reinforcement. Thank you. Great job. So I think there's some interesting things that you've been talking about here. The preparation at home, the getting the family involved in the shopping, the pre-planning. So you've got options so that if you do get stuck at a dock or in bad weather, you've got good choices, having the right snacks. But inevitably, you're going to have to pull into a truck stop. And I think that's where we tend to, when I pull into a truck stop, most of the time I'm just exhausted, and I've been battling to get there, and then I've got to deal with potholes and trying to find a truck park in an area, and there's cars parked and motorhomes parked, and by the time you get there and you get inside, right, and it's been bad enough during COVID where you've got to have the masks on and you've got no one wants to be near anybody. It's a really difficult place to be, but let's say all that's past us and we go into a truck stop now. What do I do? I'm already tired. It's 10 o'clock at night. I've been busting my butt all day to get to where I am. I need a shower. I haven't showered for 2 days. Like, that goes on every single day. What are the choices? So what do you do when you walk into that truck stop and you sit down and you think, I'm finally here? What's the decision process?
I personally, when I talk to drivers about that, I get it. They come in and the first word that comes to their mind is they feel deprived, right? They're away from home, driving all day, man, and they passed all those beautiful billboards that showed the chocolate cake, the steak, and all that stuff, right? And they see that in their mouth is watering, and they walk in, and like Mark said, they smell the cinnamon buns, which is every time I see those in there, because it's just not fair to drivers, right? Taking advantage of their mental health at that period of time, but that is what it is. And because when I do radio shows, the drivers say, Bob, when are you going to get these truck stops to start, carrying healthier stuff? And I said, here's the tip, my friend. You stop buying that crap, they'll stop. Because you're the customer, and when you go up there and they
Yeah.
want 3 Kit Kats for $1, say, hey, I don't want 3 Kit Kats. I want 3 apples and a banana or whatever for $1.
Right. Right.
You know, but to your point, I have to say that most all of the big 3 major ones now have done a pretty good job of having a section, but you got to find it. And I'm really lobbying for their support to really, especially for the drivers, to even whether it's signs or steps that here's the pathway to a healthier you, right? And go by where they have the eggs, you know, the turkey roll-ups, you know, the various different things they have made to get them, steer them away from the cinnamon roll bar and so forth. Put the water front and center up front and put all the other junk down below it. So they got to look for it if they really want it. But if they go and they side level, going now, what is it's because of why? Because those companies pay for that space, and companies are really meant what they say they mean, that they really care about the driver, then they'll reverse that and, you know, put those people at the bottom and say, listen, if you're that good of a marketing branding company and people want, they'll search you out. But we, like you said, to your point, if I go in, I'm tired and I'm looking and all I see is, you know, power, and the water's all the way at the bottom, I'm not going to really.
Good point.
Anything to carry more, you know, protein type, you know, instant protein drinks, smart to make available to have in there. I know they have some, but once again, even myself being experienced, when I stop at the travel center and I'm on the road driving, I stop in there and I look, and my 2 things I'm stopping for is actually 3. 1 is water, 2 is a protein drink, and 3 is a banana. And I'll go through there. I have to literally, I look for it because I have to go all the way to the end, and then maybe 1 row of like a Muscle Milk or whatever it is, right, that they're carrying.
Gotcha. Yep. And
you gotta look for it. And but point of, like you're saying, you gotta want to do it. You gotta get your mind right, and it's there, but you really gotta look for it, and don't let yourself get feeling bad for where you're at. Feel better about taking care of yourself and sleep good that night.
Yeah. I want to come back to how to convert your big rig into a gym, Bob, which is, you've got some great tips on it. But Mark, you want to throw some thoughts behind the truck stop dilemma that we all go through?
You know, I think kind of back to trying to move more, like Bob said, and I think when it comes to exercising, something is always going to be better. And what I've found is, just like cooking, is if you are trying to fit it into your day-to-day routine, if you find a type of exercise and movement that you enjoy doing, you are more likely to find that time on your calendar and make it happen. And, you know, I think easy ways to go about it is, I know there's commercial gyms. There are some commercial gyms that do let, you know, 24/7, what is this, 24 fitness or 24/7 fitness.
Yep.
Yeah, there's some fitness places if you like to go to the gym. If you want to do it, you know, we've got in the truck programs that's been actually the most popular because drivers don't feel comfortable or safe getting out at the truck stop and exercising, and especially female drivers. And so, you know, what I recommend is resistance bands are awesome to get a bunch of. You can almost replicate any exercise, and you can do a ton just in the bunk of your truck.
In the cab,
and so,
of course.
In the cab. And I think, you know, again, are you going to be Arnold Schwarzenegger and be, you know, is that the peak of fitness there? No, but it's better than nothing. And it's a great starting place.
It's a great idea. Resistance bands. My son's got a bunch of them up in his room, and when he works during the day, he's always sort of doing resistance work just to keep moving. Bob, one of the things that I used to do when I was driving on the road is I'd use the step tanks for step ups, to do steps. I'd always do shoulder stretches on the bull bar. I'd stretch my pecs on the bull bar. I'd lean up against the back door of the trailer, and I'd pull back on things to stretch my lats at the back, and I'd do hamstring stretches. There's a lot around a truck that you can do that's kind of like a mobile gym on wheels. Talk us through some of the things drivers can do with their truck when they say, I can't get to a gym.
Yeah, and I really came up with this years ago. I was out at a truck stop in the back where they're fueling up, and I was talking to some drivers, and this one particular driver I happened to notice was standing over in the corner while he was fueling his truck, and he was smoking a cigarette. And he came up to me and he said, "Hey Bob, I've heard you on the radio, and I just don't have time to go do all this and work." I said, "You know what?" I said, I've been talking to this driver here for 10 minutes. I noticed you over there smoking while you were, fueling your truck up. And I said, in fact, you motivated me to give me an idea. So I come up with this workout called, pump up while you fuel up. And
Right.
so it's that you take gallon jugs and you put water in whatever level you want. And you do the warm up, you can see the drivers doing the rotator cuff warm up, the circulation of the shoulder.
Yep.
Like you said, using the steps as step up, step down, go around to the front of your truck, and you can do squats off the front. You can do push-offs, you get the truck and take a lap around and kind of mixing in, like Mark had talked about, doing a combination of cardio and strength training. And I'm a big champion of the bands too. I mean, I worked with Freightliner and designed an in-cab jib system around that. And
really? Wow.
I would have drivers show up at the mats and GATs, and I would be demonstrating the bands, and they go, Bob, really, you think I'm really going to get a workout doing that? And I said, well, come up here. And hey, nobody could ever go through 3 sets of doing it, right?
Right.
It's easy to think. I mean, if you're doing it right, you keep the attention. It's a good workout. And I mean, if you look at Muscle Magazine today and workout or going to any gym, they got bands hanging all over the place. I mean, it's not only warming up, but it's a good stretch exercise. But for the drivers, it's all you really need. I mean, I'm once again, to Mark's point about some of the drivers who are really major, plugged into really cooking out there. There's a lot of drivers that are really into the working out, and they carry gyms and barbells and stuff with them. And that's great, but for the general population, it's not going to happen, and it's just not basic information. I just want them to be able to pass and keep their job and protect their livelihood and get home safe. They for a long period enough time, they get to retire healthy and they go join a gym.
Right. Yeah, you've got resistance is important. You've got 88,000 pounds of resistance, right? Or 80,000 pounds of resistance, maybe 100, depending on how many axles you've got. But you've got an enormous amount of resistance with a loaded truck and trailer. Mark, thoughts on that?
No, I think it's great. I think it's great. And kind of, right now, there's so many sacrifices that drivers make when they're out on the road. And the last thing, from Bob's point, is after retirement, you not being able to enjoy your life and having to deal with all these health issues and potentially, when you look at the statistics, decrease life expectancy. And it's like you can make small changes to your current routine, find time to move a little bit, eat 10, 15% healthier, and make a huge impact 10, 20 years down the road if you do it consistently. And I think everyone on this call, that's our goal, and that's what we're trying to do. And everyone listening to this is going to do it in their style and a little bit differently. And you just got to figure out what your style is and make it a priority and don't put it on the back burner.
So we've got 6 minutes left. I want to ask you a question that you can both wrap up on. Lots of great information. I really appreciate the knowledge you've been able to give us today. What's the first thing drivers should do? How do I start a driver health program? What do I do now? I've listened to this wonderful information. What's the first step? How do people, get in contact with you? What's a program look like? How do you engage with people? What's the first step?
Yeah, so I think I always tell people you can have the best workout program in the world, the best nutrition program, but if you don't show up and do it, it doesn't really mean much. And I think the accountability and having a coach is a really important aspect in the long run. And that's why one of our big pillars is being there and making sure that we're there to celebrate on the highs and also pull you up on the lows. And so if you look up the Trucking Fitness Company on any social media website or go to our website truckandfit.com, so truckinfit.com. You can go, and we work with trucking companies, and we also work with individual drivers. And when you sign up, the first thing you're going to do is set up a time to talk to a coach, and we're going to get you in a program that's based off of your current fitness level, your goals, and your preferences, so that we can fit it into your current routine.
Right. Bob, sort of take us home with carriers, driver health, how they get a driver health program going for that bigger fleet.
Yeah, if you're looking for some support, go to fittopass.com and you can read about what we do. But my last comment is that for you, any of the folks on here that are carriers, safety directors, I don't know what the right program is for you. I really don't, based on what you know that. But I can tell you the wrong one, and that's to do nothing at all. You need to do something that starts, I think, with education and orientation, telling drivers really what it's like out there on the road, what they can expect, and do it in the beginning, not at the end when they lose their license and they come in and you got to take them off the road. I've been around for a number of years doing this. I have tons of content information. If you need some poster, whatever you need, you can reach out to me. You can find my number at FitPass, or you can go on social media, the Trucker Trainer, or just Bob Perry put in, and you can see some of the information there and reach out to me. I send out information every day to fellow drivers and folks to get started. Mark's right, the point that it's really about accountability and support. You think about, we have training for drivers in all levels. You know, it's very interesting why the one important training they need is coaching to take care of their lives. I mean, it's thousands of dollars to keep that truck between the white lines, and it costs so little to take care of good folks like yourself, Dean, that's got 2 million miles. Like I said, why would you not want to protect Dean, who you know is hiring Joe that you don't know? So
I always struggled with, why would you teach me how to be compliant with hours of service that are largely unsafe, but not teach me how to sleep? Like, because the basic assumption is that if I have 10 hours off, I'm therefore fit for duty for the next shift. Couldn't be more incorrect when it comes to how and why we sleep. I was just thinking about your map of the truck and the doing, you know, the walking around doing the stretches. The fleets integrate that into their pre-trip, you know, because if I'm doing a pre-trip, I could be doing the pre-trip muscle workout at the same time, or post-trip.
Yeah, I urge them. I give that information to them all the time, and I urge them to work that in, make it part of it. And it's only as good as the trainer. I you know, one of the things real quick that I learned is that through our coaching, you know, you said it earlier, I find out what's really aggravates drivers. Number one, at the top of the list, they get in a fight with their dispatcher. Number two, they get a stress call at home, right? Jimmy's kicked out of school, the basement flooded. Number three is they got run off the road by a four-wheeler. But also, too, and why I didn't have a chance to go to Walmart today because my trainer says, I'm not going to take you in there. See, there's McDonald's, go get a bag of burgers. So I came up with train the trainer manual. So we train the trainers first and get them to be ambassadors so that they are laying the groundwork. Because if they don't believe in it, Dean, they're not going to tell the new folks coming in.
It's a great point. Yeah, often your you know, your sort of weakest link is kind of where your biggest exposure is. I've always found dispatchers to be an entry-level job, and one of the, because everyone's trying to get out of there. You know, they start and they want to move on, so they don't invest enough. The fleets that I've seen the most success are ones that have turned the dispatcher into a much higher paid job, so that people want to stay there and build relationships with drivers. That brings us kind of right up on time here at 2:59. Great session, folks. Just don't forget to please respond. There's a post-webinar survey that you'll see. There'll be a copy of today's webinar online. Please give us some feedback. If you'd like us to do some more on particular subjects, let us know. Bob Perry from Health and Transportation, thank you very much. Mark from the Trucking Fitness Company, thank you guys. Look forward to seeing you around the traps. We'll see Mark at Matt's coming up. Bob, hopefully we'll catch you up at one of the ATA upcoming events shortly. Thank you very much, guys. Yep. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you for having me. Yeah. Thank you.
Bye-bye.